Welcome, everybody, to the Berwick Planning Board meeting. It's a regular meeting for Thursday, December 20th, 2018. If we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, board members present tonight. We have Sean Winston, we have Niall Shore, we have Vice Chair Paul Bovair, regular member Nicole Fecto, and alternate Mike LaRue. We also have our town planner and our code enforcement officer, and various members of the public. I'd like to open up public comment session. It's open to any resident or property owner here in the town of Berwick to talk about anything that relates to the planning board. We do have an application tonight, but we're not having a public hearing on that yet. So if you'd like to come to the podium, you could talk about anything. You could talk about this application, anything that relates to the planning board. Feel free to come forward to the podium. Public comment session's open. Seeing nobody come forward, we'll close the public comment session. Moving on to the approval of minutes for the December 6th, 2018 meeting. You had something right off the bat, didn't
I do.
you?
I've got the first thing is probably quite minor, or maybe it can be explained to me. On the second page, on the new business, second paragraph, it starts out with Lee J. and then moves down 4 lines, and then it says, the sentence is very confusing. It says, Mr. Feldman stated there is missing stormwater information, and to move forward, the applicant would either need to provide the information or ask for a waiver. The beginning with habitat map shows black racers. I'm not sure what that means, the beginning with habitat map. So I think there's a word or two missing there. I think it's a capitalized word, beginning.
Does
that ring any bells?
That is how they're titled. The beginning with habitat maps are actually these maps right here,
Huh.
Okay.
and they're called beginning with habitat.
Should that be underlined or in quotes to identify it as an entity?
You could put quotes on
Okay,
it, absolutely.
that solves that one.
Yep.
Next page, the paragraph that starts with the co-owners. I believe the trees that were planted and they got approval to remove was not Northeast Ready Mix doing the removal. I think it was MIC Construction.
That is correct.
Okay, that's all I have.
Anybody else? Okay, so the motion for approval of the minutes as amended.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Seconded. Further discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your hands.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4 with 1 abstain. Moving on to old business, conditional use application, 6 Industry Drive, Aquifer Protection Zone, the Northeast Ready Mix application. Let's turn it over to the town planner.
Certainly. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So we left, let's start first with where we left off. And we left off with a concern by myself that there was a, how to interpret the ordinance and whether or not it was an industrial use and allowed in the AP zone, or whether it could in fact be considered a mineral industry and be allowed in the AP zone. We had a conference call, Dan, myself, and James had a conference call with Phil Saucier from Bernstein Scher, your town attorney. We discussed everything with Phil. He took, I think, a day or two before he rendered any thoughts or opinions on this. You have the letter in your packet tonight. He does go along with the fact that he thinks it could be interpreted as a mineral industry, and that you could move forward with the application. He does, however, indicate at the bottom of the letter, although he indicated it more strongly verbally with us on the phone, that we may need to take a look at the ordinance and come up with some additional definitions and realignment of uses. Because he too was somewhat confused by it, but bottom line, he feels that that the use could be considered an a mineral industry, which is what it seemed to have been classified in 2015 as well, and that you should move forward with the application under that premise. After that, in preparation of that decision being rendered, I drafted a second memo for you to go through more of the technical aspects of the application. We can talk about that tonight. What I see the next actions by the board needing to take would be to find the application complete, which I believe it is, and set a date for a site walk and your public hearing. Those would be the actions for you this evening. Based on that, I'd be happy, if you'd like me to kind of walk through my revised memo,
Sure.
to talk about some of the issues going on and some of the other things that I see there. This lot that the site is located on was a parcel within a subdivision that was approved by the Maine DEP in 2006 under a site location permit. The permit, and I have it with me tonight, I don't know whether James sent it to you or not, I had hoped he would. Okay, so you've seen the whole permit from DEP, and it goes through a number of technical issues. I won't bore you with all of that, but it talked about, in there, it talks about wildlife, and I had previously mentioned the black racer snake issue, and not sure how to deal with that. However, DEP said back in 2006 that because of the mining of the pit and of the property and the overburden of use of the property, that there's no issue for them to consider with that, even though they're mapped as being in that neighborhood. So that issue, I think, effectively disappears. Surface water quality, as part of the DEP's permit, they required that the site meet an 80% total suspended solids, called TSS, for the complete industrial park. There is also a section in my memo that I cut and pasted directly from the DEP permit, which talks about lot number 2 and other, and the property needing to meet a permeability of 2.41 inches per hour under the stormwater management plan. Based on the system's design, the DMW and DEA reviews, state permitting reviews, the department finds that the applicant has made adequate provisions to ensure that the proposed project will meet the stormwater quality standards for peak flow for the site and peak flow for the receiving waters, grading and other construction activity, channel limits and runoff areas, detention basins, maintenance, and easement covenants. I'm going to stop right there for a second and suggest that that statement is part of the permit and part of the review that they did on the plans. I'm not sure that the site has actually complied with that. Not my issue, but I do raise it. I raise it because I did receive a phone call earlier this week from Maine DEP enforcement. They received a complaint about the property, and they were going to be making a visit. And I'll talk a little bit more about some additional compliance issues that I think are going to fall on this applicant because of that. The aquifer, I talk about the aquifer again, just suggesting again, the one thing I will take a little bit of exception with is ATTAR's revised plan suggests that the property is not on the aquifer. It is, but that's irrelevant at this point because the use is allowed in that zone.
We'll get to that. Yeah, just remember that. Yeah, we'll get to that.
Issues regarding the proposed conditional use plan that I saw. The plan shows a cul-de-sac where the access for the site will be coming off. In the field, there is no such cul-de-sac that exists. Who's going to construct this? Is the applicant proposing to construct it? If not, I would suggest that the plan will need to be revised to show the existing in-field exists in the field and what the applicant is proposing, if anything, or you condition the approval requiring the construction prior to the start of the operation. Within that cul-de-sac, the applicant is showing catch basins, CB5A and CB5B. They do not exist as far as I can tell. I have not walked the site yet. There's signs out there that would suggest not going beyond a certain point, and so I chose not to do that. But I'd question who's putting them in. And again, that may be a condition required that the applicant is going to have to construct those. Those were also part of the permitting process with the DEP. Pond 309. I assume that this pond does not exist at this time. Again, at least I do not see it on the Google photos, the aerial photos in the area. Is this going to be constructed by the applicant? If so, does the applicant plan on placing the 12-inch HDPE pipe in the parking lot on top of the larger stormwater pipe? And why wouldn't the design integrate the system better? It's showing two pipes, and if you look, well, I looked at the elevations of the pipes in the ground, and they're going to be laying right on top of each other. It can work, and they're only stormwater pipes, but I would have hoped maybe they put an additional manhole in and tie those basins into one pipe at that point. I'm not sure the design is that efficient. The applicant's information indicates that they weigh material on the site. Are they proposing a scale on the property? Because there's not shown. And as we know, truck scales are fairly large, and I think it would be large enough that it ought to be shown on the site plan wherever it's planned to be constructed, if one is planned to be constructed. The applicant is showing a general area for stone sand. Will this be in a three-sided separation bins or just open stockpile? The plan also shows a designated area for something but does not indicate what will be stockpiled there. They have revised their plan and indicate that sand and stone will be located there. Also, the plan shows a washout pit. I would think that the board would like to see more information on the design and what it would be lined with, if lined at all. They have provided a design in the revised plans for you of how that washout pit would be constructed. So you'll need to take a closer look at that. Based on the previously approved plan for this applicant dated January and February of 2015, on tax map R72 lot 12A, the applicant had not completed the improvements contemplated as part of the approval on the current site. Those go back to the plans from before. If the board chooses to approve the project, I would suggest that a performance guarantee be placed in escrow for the proposed site to be reclaimed in the future. The applicant has shown again, washout pit, otherwise known as settling basin. The applicant has not provided any information. I just reiterated that in my memo. At this time, I have concerns with the applicant cannot perform in a way that would satisfy the plans as proposed. That was prior to the revisions of the plans that they've submitted, which they do address some of the issues, not all. I would recommend the following conditions of approval when the board gets to that point. The applicant provide a performance guarantee equal to the amount of the proposed improvements to the site. The applicant will need to provide that dollar amount through the engineer based on the design of the plan and conditions of the approval. The plan shows an unbuilt cul-de-sac on the plan. The applicant shall construct the cul-de-sac and all other site improvements in conformance with the main DEP order L-17490-39-F-N, which was the approval of the MIC subdivision back in 2006. The applicant provide evidence that they can meet the 80% total suspended solids standards outlined in Chapter 500 of the Stormwater Rules, and number 9, surface water quality, number 9 of the DEP permit for surface water quality. The site is located in Knights Pond watershed. Knights Pond is located in South Berwick, but it's located in that watershed and is fairly close to that property. So we want to make sure that the total suspended solids and stormwater that's going there is being addressed. The plan shows a cul-de-sac at the end of the paved street, Industry Drive. The applicant shall build the street in order to finish the required street from the subdivision and provide adequate access to the applicant's facility as part of the approval. Also, the applicant shall install CB5A and CB5B, which are shown on the plan, if they have not already been constructed, and again, I can't see where they have been. The applicant shall provide detailed designs showing how the washout pit will be designed in order to prevent impact to the aquifer below the site. That's my memo at this time for you. And again, your action tonight would be to find the application complete and set the date for a site walk and a public hearing.
Okay. So is the board satisfied with the zoning matter that we talked about 2 weeks ago with the letters that we got from the attorney?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the
Yeah.
use,
Yep. Okay.
particular use.
Seems
Right.
to fit mineral industry, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for getting that. So, all right, so we can move on from there. So I'll have the applicant, if they want to come on up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lou Chamberlain from Attar Engineering. I've been working with Northeast Ready Mix on the design of this project. And I think one of the most important things that Lee J brought up was that this project fits into an overall stormwater design that was approved for the subdivision back in 2006. So that kind of encompassed the 6 lots. There were a number of TSS ponds, total suspended solid treatment ponds that were designed, pretty intensive review by the DEP and by the town. And our plan shows basically the same features that were designed in 2006 being built and recreated on Lot 5. As Lee J noted, there are a number of other things that probably need to be installed to bring the whole subdivision in compliance with the stormwater permit. And I've talked to the owner, Bill Toby, of the other lots about getting that done. As to, who does what, I think it's all going to get done, and we're just not sure who's going to do what yet. But it does need to be constructed, as Lee J notes, and we have intention to do that. As far as the cul-de-sac, that has been constructed to base gravel, so it's not obvious, looking at an aerial that the cul-de-sac has been put in place, but it has been. And I've, again, talked to Bill Toby about getting that open and at least getting it passable for fire trucks and access for Lenny's trucks. And so we've also reached out to the fire chief just to get his opinion on what if anything, needs to be done for access. Haven't heard back on that. The stone areas, I believe that's going to be up to Northeast Ready Mix, whether they just have open piles or if they use some concrete containments. They are comfortable with the site and the site plan, and they can make that work operationally. I'm trying to think what else. The washout pit, there is a detail on sheet 2 in the lower left that shows dimensions and depths and a pond liner and some maintenance notes on that. And that, as Lee J points out, is a sensitive item on the site. And the DEP actually took a close look at that and had some comments for us, and we revised accordingly. So there is a detail on that if you want to take a look. I guess lastly, I'd like to cover the recommendation number 3, providing evidence that we're meeting the 80% TSS removal rate. And that's actually written in the permit that the site, of course, if it's built out as designed, will achieve 90% TSS removal rate. So the design in 2006 kind of covered that. And that's something that the BMPs will have to be built. Once they are, we'll get the 90% removal rate in excess of the 80%. And so that should be covered.
Those ponds have to be maintained on a regular schedule, right? Do we know when the last time maintenance was done on them? Because they might not be in compliance anymore because of that.
That's right. And 3 of the ponds I don't believe exist or are only partially constructed. But there is a maintenance plan that was approved as part of the subdivision. And there's supposed to be a lot owners association, and the 6 owners will take care of the ponds and the drainage easements. So typically those get inspected every 6 months to make sure they're not silted in, the outlets are working, and things like that.
Is that washout pit to be used by more than Northeast?
No.
No. But you mentioned the maintenance of it would be for the 6 lot.
No, it's
Well,
about the ponds.
I guess
Pond.
the washout pit is separate from the detention ponds.
Talk about the
All right,
ponds,
So
yeah.
just the pond, which is not on this lot.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
The issue of the scale,
Right. I guess I would defer to Lenny on that. I am not sure if they're going to put how they weigh their materials. No truck scale.
The question on the pit, is that for drum washout on the trucks, or is that for the whole truck? Just drum washout.
Yeah.
Do you know what, Lee J was mentioning something about the state calling the town about some non-compliance with the slot. Do you know anything about that?
I don't. I had heard that someone had called the DEP and had concerns about what was going on, but I've worked closely with the project manager on the Northeast Ready Mix lot, and they're ready to issue a permit for this particular part. Now, they may have taken the phone call and are looking at the bigger picture, but as far as this one project, we should have the DEP permit in a couple weeks.
So there's a lot of work that has to be done on not only this property, but all the other properties too, to get it to where it should be.
I believe it's really the 3 detention ponds that are on, one of them is partly on this lot, but there's 2 others that I don't believe have been constructed and probably need to be.
And the cul-de-sac.
In the cul-de-sac, yes. Yep.
Any other questions?
So there are 3 ponds on the entire mixed site then?
There's actually 4. There's a wet pond that is kind of the receiving BMP of the whole subdivision, and that's the one that's in South Berwick. There's a vegetated swale that flows off of Lot 5 into that pond. And that one, I believe, has been constructed. It doesn't show on that plan. It's really on.
It's a narrow, long swale on the south side of the parcel.
So
Where's lot 5?
Lot 5 is right here.
Right there, okay.
So here's Route 4, here's Industry Drive. It's paved to about right here. It's gravel to here. Lot 5 is here. And the 3 ponds that I'm talking about are this one, and this one. And then the 4th pond is that. And this one has been constructed. You can see that clearly in an aerial photo.
It's also much larger than the other
Yes.
3 ponds.
Of course, my biggest concern is not the other ponds on the MIC part of the subdivision, as much as it is what I'm calling Pond 309, which is partially on this site. And I note that that's the one that I don't think has been constructed, but if they're showing it on the plan and it needs to be part of, the stormwater design, then we need to get that constructed.
As a condition of approval.
Yes.
And that's not on this lot.
It's
If I may.
partially.
Partially on
309
it.
is.
Yeah,
Yes.
partially
Yes.
on it.
Yes.
Correct.
But,
Yeah.
so this would be, I guess it is kind of like a homeowners association, but whose responsibility is it to build those? Everybody would have to get together and pitch in money and build them.
That's a good question.
And maintain them. I mean, if you don't know, they're supposed to be being maintained every 6 months. Nobody has any record of them being maintained.
I don't know that for a fact. I could check and see, but if they're not
Probably be
built,
good to know.
they're probably not being, yeah. But the maintenance is a responsibility of the 6 lot owners. And I believe 4 of the 6 are owned by one of the original developers, and then 2 of them are other owners, I believe.
So I mean, this project could be approved, but before anything can happen, 3 additional ponds need to be built.
It depends on how that gets handled. I would say for this project right here, we'd be responsible for what's on Lot 5 for Northeast Ready Mix.
But what's
As
on
for-
Lot 5 is conditional on everything else working.
It
So
is.
how
It's
are
hard
we
to-
supposed
It's
to
hard to argue
approve
that it's
something?
not, yeah.
Yeah, when nothing else exists.
Yeah.
Who checks the DEP, I would imagine, once the work commences on these ponds and it's finished, they come down and check this, right? We don't have, do we have to get somebody, like another engineering firm to?
It depends on how the permit's written. Like the permits that I've done recently, normally they require the design engineer to inspect and write a report. It's not me, because I didn't do the project in 2006.
I used to have a pond in a homeowners association that I lived in, and we would have to hire, I think it was every 5 years that we had to do it there, but we'd have to hire an engineer to come in and inspect it and then file with the state.
Right. there's a 5-year recert that you're right, you have to have someone come in, and you can do it yourself, like a homeowners association can do it, they don't require an engineer. But as they're being built, they normally require the design engineer to be there periodically and write a report at the end that things were built right. This particular permit, I don't believe had that condition. So,
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I think, and I had not, I'm trying to walk a very fine line between separating the rest of the project and those issues and this site. But one of the things as we get sensitive types of projects to review is where we might condition them on having a third-party independent engineer do site inspections during the construction and provide reports to the town so that we know that things are being built. I had not considered it in this particular issue simply because some issues are this applicant's that I don't think are as big, but some issues are clearly bigger than us at this point, and not part of this review, so it's very difficult for us to, or we shouldn't really be conditioning them or requiring them to do things that are not part of this project. So it's a very, very sticky issue from a standpoint of where do you draw that line? And
Well, you're talking about specifically the ponds.
that's correct.
But if I'm just, and the cul-de-sac, but the ponds, if they're all supposed to work together,
Correct.
So should we not review this on the assumption that the other ponds will not be built?
Well, I think, I guess what I would first suggest is we do this site walk as part of your review. And have some additional conversation. I might need to have some conversation, further conversation maybe with our legal folks, with Phil, to find out what his thoughts are versus, I did not, I was contacted by the DEP because someone else had contacted them, but now that that conversation has opened, I will probably call the enforcement agent and have a conversation with him and find out how do we deal with this. I don't want to put a burden, as much as I'm wanting to make sure we do this review correct, I'm also not wanting to put an extra burden on them as the applicant.
no, not at all.
For other things
Right.
that haven't
that,
been
that
done
were
by
outside of
somebody
their
else.
control.
Right.
Exactly.
Correct. So, I'm probably gonna have to have that type of a conversation so that I can give you folks the guidance on where do we draw that line, but we still have a little time here because you're not approving anything
Yeah.
tonight.
Right. We're just
Finding an
we're
application.
just finding the application
Correct.
complete tonight. So
We're dealing with
Correct.
this application. But I mean, really, the story is, there's been a lot of stuff that should have happened, never happened. It's really not part of this plan.
Right.
And what do you do with it, you know? But I get a feeling that someone's gonna be looking and saying, you know, to the rest of the people in this, outside of this plan, that they've gotta do something.
But I go back and say, we cannot assume that those other things are going to happen.
Right.
That'll
Correct.
have to be
So we
another-
have to
But
require
this plan assumes that those things have happened.
that this
Correct.
functions independently
From
of
the other,
those things,
the other things that are not.
which may or may not happen, but since it's been 12 years and they haven't happened,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we can assume that they're not likely
I
to.
mean, yeah, and part of that issue certainly is that this, from your perspective, at this point in time, you're reviewing a project on a lot in a previously approved, permitted, project that you're assuming is operating correctly, from an environmental standpoint. So, this site technically could be a slam dunk, but there are other issues that are outside the purview of this review that could become a concern.
And those are the discussions that you would like to have with
Yeah, and
somebody
I will
else.
have them in a timely manner so that I have answers
So,
for you
but
folks.
for tonight's, we can just deal with the completeness of the
Correct.
plan.
Yes, you can.
Do our site visit, which I
That's
think,
correct.
We can see what this plan, Lot 5 is.
Correct.
But you can also look sideways as you're driving in and out.
Yes.
all right. Do we want to talk about the application being complete?
Well, can I ask a couple more questions on the plan?
Sure. Yeah.
So, the plant is shown on here. there's another block that says add mix. Is that the cement storage?
Is it what?
Is that the cement storage? Where is it? That's where the cement is? That's the add mix on the plan? Yeah, you got sand pile, you got a stone pile, the plant is shown on the plan, and then there's another block here that says add mix. Is that,
Liquid air and stuff like that.
okay, so that's the other additives for the concrete, okay. So where is the cement? Is cement storage gonna be on site?
Stored in the plant.
So it's stored, so the plant stores the cement?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And then that was my other question, was additives. And then, as far as like truck washes, trucks getting washed on site, so how are we controlling oil and grease and any runoff from the trucks? Is that going right into the catch basins? This is gonna be paved, from what I can tell.
There isn't any catch basin to begin with,
Well, there's catch basins on the plan.
Right, so is your question,
not installed yet, so.
Yeah, but once this is approved as it is here, I've worked on a lot of construction sites. I've never seen a piece of heavy equipment that doesn't leak something.
That's true.
Hydraulic fluid, oil, grease.
So you're thinking like oil water separators?
In the final catch basin, I think that might be something we need to put in, since this is gonna go headed right for the aquifer protection zone and Knight's Pond.
Go ahead.
there is a hooded, that last catch basin?
Yeah.
It was part of the original approval, it's got a hood on it.
So
Like an
that's
oil
the
water
water
separator.
separator. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Part of the original approval,
Part of
though?
the original approval.
So is it there?
It's not in yet.
Not there yet.
Okay.
So that's gonna be,
It will be going in.
if I read this right,
All right.
that's,
Will you be putting it in?
Will I?
I would mean, will the applicant be putting it in? Or being
putting
responsible
it
for
in?
somebody?
Yeah.
under
The answer is
control
yes.
to put it.
Yeah, it has to go in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
so like CB5D or D, whichever it is here? Is that
The
the,
lowest
Yes,
one.
it's the.
that's the one before
it's
it runs off into?
On the left, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess the only other thing is runoff from the sand and the stone piles. I don't know how that's gonna get controlled.
That, I mean, I think the treatment system that's in place for the whole subdivision will handle that. It's designed to remove suspended solids. It goes through a hooded catch basin into a vegetated swale, into a wet pond. It's kind of that's exactly what the treatment system does.
But that's the treatment system, we don't know whether it all
Right.
exists or not.
And what I'm
Doesn't.
saying is we're gonna work through that and we're gonna do on our lot what we have to do.
Absolutely. People don't come here
All
to
the
us
other
and
trucking companies in town, they all wash their trucks, so they have these problems.
No, I'm sure others do, but are they this close to the
Well,
aquifer protection
If I-
zone or
if I
to Knight's
can-
Pond or?
We've had,
and if I can, the ready mix
Yeah.
facility
Yes.
across the street just was
Yeah.
before you last year, putting in an inside wash
separator,
bay.
a dryer, they like,
Where-
it dries it
yeah,
all
with
out. So
steam,
yeah,
like
we've
steam
seen it.
dry, evaporate,
Yeah.
dry they're gonna wash their
Yeah.
vehicles inside with that equipment.
Oh, it takes hours over there then.
There you go. They'll love you for that, I'm sure.
That's fine.
If
As long
work
as you
out
have
a
a
deal with
plan
them, that's
for it.
perfect.
As long as you have a plan for it.
Well, with them, so it wouldn't be impossible. They're good people. Yeah.
Do you have something else?
The last point I'd like to make is we did add the location of the aquifer protection zone on the plan.
Yeah, I did, it is on here, it's on, right on,
And that was,
we're inside it.
I have a map with an aerial if you're interested in where it is in the bigger context, but it is on the plan.
Anything else from the board?
That's all I have on the plan.
I think, the money, I guess, but maybe that's a little earlier than we need to talk about, how, whether you
Yeah.
bond this or you post, how you do that.
Letter of credit,
Letter
bond,
of credit,
Yeah.
as
Check.
long as they can prove they can handle.
Cash.
cash, anything like that that
First
can be
one.
held in
Only
escrow.
Be for whatever is on lot 5.
Correct.
the ready mix,
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman,
Fairly complete.
I think it would be an advantage for you when you're doing the site walk that there's probably some orange cones at all the points and turns of the lot itself. It's pretty confusing when you get out there, whereas
Yeah.
it's so big. If they could mark that out, it'd be a help.
Yeah.
Stake it out.
Yeah, we can do that.
Orange cone,
For stakes, flag stakes,
orange
okay?
cones.
Yeah.
But what is the
Dan
terrain
Dan
like,
likes cones.
what's the
Dan
terrain
likes
like
cones.
now when you look out there? Is it all discombobulated, or is it fairly flat?
We filled it in flat to match Shapley's next door and the rest of the development.
Yeah, so it looks pretty flat then.
Right, then it drops off, so it would drain away from the aquifer, you mean. And it's designed to drain
Yeah.
back away from the aquifer.
Good.
Like now, we're in a mud puddle over there, we don't want that, we want the water to go somewhere, I mean, beside the aquifer.
Yeah, so do we.
So do we.
Good.
It's for everybody's benefit. I
Yeah.
mean, it's much better than
Yeah.
what we have now, so. Sooner or later, there'll be another one, and how could anything go down? And what place to the water? Nobody's fault, that's just the way it is. So we want to get up on higher ground where the water would drain away from there and protect that, you know?
Anything else?
I think we need a motion.
Well, the motion will be for accepting the application is complete.
I will make the motion that we deem this application for Ready Mix complete.
I will second your motion.
Okay, we have a second, further discussion? All in favor? Okay, it's 5-0. So, we gotta look at
Public hearing.
our first meeting in January is going to be January 3rd. Thursday, January 3rd. We could do a site walk. We got sunset at like 4:20, 4:30, so if we could
Get two.
try to get out there. It's going to be a little bit. Can we get out there for like 4 o'clock?
That's gonna be kind of late, don't you think?
Can we have it, is it possible to have it on a weekend? I mean, what's,
Well,
Saturday morning, early before
Are
hockey?
we gonna get overtime for the weekend, Paul?
seriously.
Double our usual
Time,
rate.
yeah.
Well, I mean, the weekend is the weekend of the 30th. The weekend prior is the weekend of the 30th. I'm not gonna be here, but
Happy New Year.
not happening. Can
We
we
could
just
try-
go a
we
little
could-
bit earlier on the
At
3rd?
3:30.
3:30 works better, I think.
3:30 on
Can you do
January
that, Sean?
3rd. Does that work?
Probably can't make.
I'll FaceTime you.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't have iPhone, so. that won't work.
I'll call you and tell you all
Skype.
about it.
3:30?
3:30.
That work for you?
Yep.
6 Industry Drive.
That's 3:30, and that's, it's gonna be at the end of Industry. You're
Yep.
gonna go all the way to the back. And that's January?
Yep. You just come to the podium.
2019.
Yep.
3:30 now?
I was late, so I don't know if there's an opportunity for me to,
When we get to the public comment session,
okay.
which is coming right up, so don't go anywhere.
Don't get comfortable
Moving
back
on
there.
from old business. Next on the agenda will be the public comment session. I said don't go anywhere. Public comment session is open to any resident or property owner in the town of Berwick to talk about anything relating to the planning board. Yes, sir.
I'm the abutter to the development.
Can you
And
just state your name and address for?
Manley Gove, and I, Northeast Ready Mix is on my property, and they're moving over there. I don't have a problem with what they're gonna do over there. What I have a problem with is, we've got a development that was approved 10 or 15 years ago, and it was approved by having, is my understanding, a hot top road, a cul-de-sac, and it had stormwater management. It has stormwater management that go on this property. There's stormwater management that goes over the properties that have been sold. And where I have my real problem is the water is backing up onto my property. And I haven't done an in-depth study, but what I have done is they weren't supposed to make it so that my property or any property, it would prohibit the drainage from flowing the way it naturally does. And that's my main concern. And if we haven't got the ponds built now, if we haven't got the road built now, if we haven't got the storm water management built now, when? If not now, when?
That's what we were talking about, I think.
I
when you walked in,
understand,
yeah.
but you're saying that we just got to look at this one lot, and what I'm telling you is there's already been lots sold off that this stormwater management, it was very intense stormwater management, and it goes over property that they may or may not give people the ability to construct that the way it was planned.
Can you just answer those comments, because I think you did earlier.
Yeah, I don't think those are, at this point in this board's purview, to be looking at and considering. We have an applicant in front of us on a particular site. We need to address any of the issues pertaining to that site. These other issues are bigger issues, and the permitting was done by the Maine DEP under a site location permit. And as I've suggested, the DEP has been contacted, and they contacted me, and I suspect they will be making a site visit and dealing with that under a separate purview that I don't think is really ours to consider at this time.
I think you missed that.
I didn't miss it. I don't agree with it. And one of the reasons, why do we have a subdivision ordinance? We make plans, we depend on the DEP and their expertise to tie them in. We have frontage requirements. The frontage requirements are to be built on hot top roads. There are no hot top roads where this intersects. When you approved that originally, all this stuff with the DEP had already been approved. You're saying, well, we're gonna go out there, we're gonna build these. They haven't built a road. They haven't built a storm water management. They haven't built the ponds. But I'll tell you one thing they have done. They've put a pile of fill that blocks my property from drainage properly. And I went to him, I says, the president, and he called me a liar last time. I feel that you always need to go to somebody and say, why don't we work together? He made it clear to me that wasn't going to happen. I'm not sure why he called me a liar, but I did go to him, and he did say it's not going to happen. It's the whole development is all one. To say that you're going to have the two lot owners have to participate in building out this development is not fair on them. And now you sell one more lot off. How are you going to be able to produce that storm water management? All they got to say is, you can't come on my property to build that storm water management. You can't build those drains. You can't put those culverts in.
There's a couple things I think I'd like to make sure that are true. One thing is, this application for Northeast Concrete on that lot, I want to be sure that it doesn't preclude or make any modifications outside this area. I want to make sure that those modifications, this will not impede or preclude whatever is done outside this lot. So by approving this, if we approve this, the DEP approves it, it's not making the rest of it, remediation if it's needed outside this lot, impossible or difficult. I'd like to make sure that that's covered.
It's a system that's all in it.
Because attention now has been drawn to some deficiencies that have occurred that impact you, and hopefully somebody, is taking notice.
Mr. Grogan, Brad, I was at the last meeting, attorney for them. My understanding, nothing is gonna change from what was approved in the subdivision with this. This is just gonna bring this lot into compliance with what's already been
But
approved.
whatever happens on this application, I want to make sure it has negative impact on remediating whatever is outside it.
I would suggest that it doesn't, because everyone who bought a lot in that subdivision, they're bound by all
And I
this.
would listen to an engineer tell me that, no, that's not going to happen.
So I think that this, if they build out what's supposed to be in here, it's what you're supposed to do, and it's bringing the entire subdivision more into compliance, and everyone else is subject to the same things, that when they bought a lot, they're subject to everything that's in there, so.
But if the rest of the subdivision is not in compliance, we can't pretend that he's gonna become in compliance by attaching into a system that doesn't exist. So we need to review what he does independently, which is what I suggested, and we'll hear from Lee J.
Make sure
how
this
we're
will
gonna
not
do
make
it.
the situation any worse.
Yeah, you're only responsible for lot 5, but you are responsible for lot 5, which means that you cannot rely on things that don't exist in the other lots. As we go along, we'll find out if you're able to do that or not. But we don't need to worry about that tonight.
Right, and I understand that. I'm just want to reiterate my concern. My lot's underwater, and nobody cares.
They're in it right now.
Yeah, and,
Want it tomorrow.
and so much as this development, and nobody's gonna correct it. And that's why
Well,
I
that's
said,
why, I think that's why somebody called the DEP. You might want to, I mean, and I don't know if Lee J, I don't know if you can share any information with whoever the enforcement is at DEP, so he could speak with Mr. Gove. And then you can give him a call, and he could come out and see your property firsthand. I mean, I guess he's already going to be coming out, whoever
As far
this,
as I know, yes, he was
Yeah.
going to make a visit out to the property. He
Yeah.
didn't know when, because I offered to meet him out there on a date specific, and he couldn't make that date, but.
that would be the best thing for the state, the DEP, to look at that, look at the burden that you have now because of non-compliance of many different
but
things.
it's just not non-compliance. It's, Phil is being hauled in, has been hauled in this last year. It's been steadily hauled in, and it's a 6-foot mound, and my property cannot drain properly because the water is always drained toward the pond, and there's a natural drainage way, and they blocked it off, and
Well, I mean, that, I don't know who or why they called the DEP, but that's obviously a problem. You can't fill that in.
well,
You
we
can't
have,
block it.
we have rules right here in this town that prohibit you just from bringing in thousands of yards and just keep bringing it in. You know, I don't know where you go in this state, you can get a plan all approved and then start selling off lots and not have the road built, continue to haul fill in, don't build it. You know, what world allows that in this state? I just don't know where it happens.
It's a code enforcement issue, and we had, you know, Dan's our new code enforcement officer. He's part-time. The code enforcement officer that we had before was, what, 24 hours a week? We haven't had a full-time one, and if nobody calls him, and when there's problems, you know, he's not going to know about it.
And it sounds like it's bigger than just our code office, which is limited in Berwick.
But it would
It's
start with
DEP,
Dan.
yeah.
It would start with
Right.
Dan, and he'd go in there and he'd look at it and he'd look at the plans, and then he would say, okay, yeah, you shouldn't be blocking that, or you shouldn't be bringing all this in. This was never. It's got to start, and then James in the planning office is, you know, he can pull those records too and see exactly what is
But
going on
it's
here.
not only the main lot that's directly beside me being filled, this lot here has been being filled. You know, there's rules, you're supposed to follow them. And the reason they're there is for the abutters, so that you don't hurt them.
I would start with Maine DEP. I would talk to James in the planning office, and he could get you that contact if whoever called Lee J from enforcement, and
What's it-
have them come out and visit you.
Once attention is drawn to this, you know, this situation, I think you have a good chance that something is going to be fixed.
Well, that's what I want, and I felt the way I should do it would be to work with the owner, but the owner doesn't want to work with me.
And that's why you got to go this direction, unfortunately.
Well, quite frankly, Sam Mick was a good friend of mine for years, and I known what was going on. I gone to see him. He said, "Don't worry about me, and I'm going to take care of it." And I can tell you, Sam Mick always stood by his word, and I didn't worry about it. Even though it was a concern of mine, I said, well, Sam's going to take care of it someday. But we all got a appointed day, which we're going to head her on out, and once that day comes, you're not doing anything.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I think part of the problem, DiMario owned that from Massachusetts years ago, and they dug way deeper than they were supposed to. So I think that's part of the reason Mick was supposed to fill it in to get it back to compliance.
I think you're going to get some answers with the DEP coming out there. Yeah.
Right, I don't think it's any one person's fault.
Right, yep.
I think it's a combination. of-
DEP and, you know, when in doubt, come talk to the planning officer, code enforcement officer when there's problems. I mean, if normally what happens throughout the course of a project, the code enforcement officer comes out there continually and follows up on it. But this was, what, 12 years ago?
Yep.
And I don't know how many code enforcement officers we've been through. You're our historian. It's been a while. I know Joe wasn't around that.
At my age, I
It's
forget.
been a while. I mean, we even had the fire chief as the code enforcement for a while. So I mean, that's why stuff has fallen through the cracks like that,
Right.
unfortunately. But anybody else for public comment session? All right, seeing nobody else come forward, we'll close public comment session. Anything from the board that wants to share?
It's Christmas.
All right, that sounds good. We still had a meeting. Paul didn't know we had a meeting tonight until I reminded him about an hour before the meeting was supposed to start.
Hanging around the wrong place.
We're all hanging out at the wrong place together.
Right place.
Anything else? Adjournment?
I move that we adjourn the December 20th planning board meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?